Hello everyone, and welcome to STEAM Talks, a week-long STEAM event where we explore the different fields in STEAM and the wonderful women that are a part of it. This event is brought to you by Girl Up Brampton and WiSTEM Ching. My name is Kushleen Bawa, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm from WiSTEM Ching as one of the networking executives. I will let the other executive members that have also worked on this project introduce themselves, starting with WiSTEM.
Hi everyone, my name is Avinaya. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm one of the co-founders of WiSTEM Ching.
Hi, my name is Andrea. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm also one of the co-founders of WiSTEM Ching.
Hi everyone, my name is Bhavni, and I am the secretary at WiSTEM, and my pronouns are also she and her.
Hi everyone, my name is Dania. I'm one of the graphic designers at WiSTEM Ching, and my pronouns are any, so any pronouns.
And now we have our Girl Up Brampton executives.
Hi everyone, my name is Shristi. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the lead of Girl Up Brampton.
Hi everyone, my name is Pranita. My pronouns are also she and her, and I am the Director of Media and Design at Girl Up Brampton.
Hi everyone, my name is Navia and I'm from Girl at Brampton. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Director of Sponsorship and Outreach.
Now, before we begin today's panel, we would like to recite a brief land acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land which we call home, on which we gather, and which the region of Peel operates, is part of the tree lands and the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. For thousands of years, Indigenous peoples inhabited and cared for this land. In particular, we acknowledge the territory of the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and Ojibwe people. The land that is home to the Métis, and most recently, the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land, and by doing so, give our respect to its first inhabitants. We would like to thank all Indigenous individuals for their contributions and sacrifices, and recognize that land acknowledgements are just the first step towards reconciliation. Now, today we have here with us is Andrea Chakma, and I hope I said that name right because I mentioned before that how I butchered everyone's name, who is a third-year Mechatronics Engineering student at the University of Waterloo. She's an incoming product manager at Splunk and has interned at companies such as RBC and KPMG. Andrea is an avid volunteer and works with organizations such as Women in Engineering, Engineering Ambassadors, Girl Guides of Canada, and DevelopForGood. She's passionate about using tech for good and empowering youth to become strong leaders. Today, she'll be presenting to us about her journey as a woman in STEM, her passions towards increasing the female representation in the STEM fields, and her work experiences. I will now give the floor to Andrea.
Sweet. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. As I was introduced, my name is Andrea, and I am a third-year Mechatronics Engineering student at Waterloo. Super excited to be here with all of you today. Hopefully, my talk will maybe inspire you. It will get you thinking of potentially pursuing a career in tech, and maybe get you thinking about what you want to pursue in terms of a future role. So I'll quickly share my screen here. We'll do some slides that I have ready. Let's see. Hopefully everybody can see that. Yes, no, yes, I see nodding. We're good. Okay. So yeah, today I'll be speaking a bit about my role or like my journey, I guess, through tech, starting all the way from high school all the way till now. High school seems like it was so long ago, but it really wasn't. But yeah, hopefully, as I said, you'll get something out of this talk. I like to keep it as like an open conversation. So if you do have any questions or things that pop up, please put them in the chat. I'll keep an eye on that as well, and kind of try to answer questions as I go as well. So yeah. All right, as I mentioned, my name is Andrea. I am a third-year Mechatronics Engineering student at Waterloo. Those are just some of my hobbies and interests. reading, traveling, running, volunteering, stationery. I'm a huge stationery freak. You can find me in the aisles of Indigo and HomeSense, combing through the different notebooks and agendas and all that fun stuff. And my favorite place, I love to say, is the mountains. Whenever I can go hiking is always great. But today we're going to be focusing a little bit on less on my hobbies and interests, but more so on the journey that I took to get to the place where I am today. And so before we kind of get started, let me kind of share this collage of things with you so you can get to know who I am as an individual. I feel like it's always so hard, especially virtually, when you try to, I guess, get to know one another and things like that. So I like to present this collage. Girl Guides is a huge part of my life. As I mentioned, reading, public speaking, attending events like this. I am a huge morning person, so you will find me up and early, 5, 6 a.m. on a walk to catch the sunrise. I'm super organized. Women in engineering is a huge thing. Love running. And I also am a huge fan of like cultural things. So a fun fact about me is I rarely ever listen to like the top 40 hits that play on the radio. I listen to a mix of Bollywood and K-pop. Yeah, I'm an interesting person. I listen to basically everything that isn't Canadian culture or like North American culture, if that makes sense. But hopefully that gave you a little taste of who I am as an individual and kind of some of the things that I'm interested in. But let's start off with high school. So in high school, it was high school. I think there were a lot of pros, there were a lot of cons, but I think at the end of the day, these 4 images kind of sum up my experience. So I had always liked math and science. I wasn't always good at it. I definitely wasn't the best physics student out there, but I enjoyed it. And that really was, I think, one of the highlights of my high school experience. But really more importantly, I think I really enjoyed being involved in extracurriculars and being involved in the community, making those connections, helping other people. I'd be the first to admit that there were multiple times where I focused more on my extracurriculars than that test I had to pass to get to university. So school and I think academics are very important, and I think they set you up for great academic success. But at the same time, I would put a huge emphasis on the extracurriculars that you do, the people that you meet, the relationships that you get, those real world experiences, I think, that come out of volunteering, out of being involved in extracurriculars is so, so important. And for reference, like in high school, I was a part of my student council, International Bazaar. And I think those memories gave me more perspective and more, I think, opportunities to figure out who I am as an individual than passing my high school test or functions test was. And I'm not saying that you should not focus on your school or in your studies. Like school is very important, but at the same time, one of the biggest takeaways I had in high school and that I'm very proud of myself for doing is being involved and for making those connections and for having those opportunities, because I think that's important. But with that being said, though, like something I do regret is not taking more risks. And I think in high school, oftentimes we're put into this, I guess, mindset that we need to do whatever it takes to get into university or post-secondary or things like that. But very often do we forget to basically take risks and to try different things. So my version of something that I wish I did in high school was to join more sports teams. I'm terrible at sports, but I feel like it would have been something that I could have learned from and that would have helped me grow. But in order to sum things up, that would be my high school. Math and science were top of the list and volunteering was at the top of the list. But as I got into grade 11 and 12, I realized that I didn't know what I wanted to do and I didn't know how to get to where I wanted to be. I knew certain things about my life, but I didn't know, what I want to do like 2-3 years down the line, or maybe 4 or 5 years, maybe even 10 years down the line. So that's when I started taking stock of what do I have to offer and what do I want to kind of give to other people. And that's where mechatronics came into play. I'm pretty sure probably none of you have heard of what mechatronics is. And the first question I still get to this day of any interview that I do, of anybody that I meet, is what is mechatronics? And the way that I explain it is it's a type of engineering that combines a little bit of everything and gives you a ton of skills. And what I mean by that is it's a bit of mechanical, where you design and create different objects and systems that move or are in motion. There's a bit of computer and electrical, where you basically work with like electrical devices to serve various functions, and computer science plays a huge role in that as well. And then there's systems design, where you use knowledge from like different fields and put them together to ultimately help you design the robot of your dreams, essentially. And I know that this is more of a tech talk versus an engineering talk, but I think it's also important to kind of highlight how engineering has actually led me to the tech industry. So now going into my university edition, very quickly in my degree, I realized that I hated mechanical engineering. It was not for me. I did not like designing using the different tool sets. But what I did like, which I didn't like in high school, was coding. And I realized that I was a very good person to kind of take the lead and do like a lot of project and product management. So I figured something out in my first couple of years of university. I realized that I wanted to be in a position where I could mix business and tech, or business and engineering, which a lot of the times is the world of tech, where it's mixing the business side and it's mixing the engineering side of the world and putting it together and kind of serving it up to the world in however way you see fit. And so a huge motivation of mine behind joining engineering was using tech for good, and leveraging that technology, the software, the development, so that you could help people in developing countries or help people in your local community basically solve their problems, solve the problems that they have and the issues that they're facing. Something else I think that university really taught me was in first year, I decided that I would not be doing any extracurriculars. And as you can imagine, as somebody who was very involved in extracurriculars, that actually had a very negative effect on, I guess, my first year of university, in the sense that I felt demotivated. I felt like I didn't know where I wanted to be. And I quickly realized that extracurriculars are what I needed. So I joined organizations, as I mentioned in my bio, of ENGSOC, Engineering Society, Women in Engineering, Engineering Ambassadors. And also I started my Duke of Ed Gold Award. So the Duke of Edinburgh Award is basically like a personal development award that people mainly do in high school. I have to say it's definitely a high school thing, but I took the challenge because you can definitely still earn the award when you're, I think, up to 25 or even higher or even older than that. So it was something that I took upon myself because I still wanted to learn, grow, and develop as an individual, and not just define my entire university life as I sat there studying and like learning different technical things. I still wanted to have that balance. So that would really kind of explain how I got to like my university side. And I think once I started kind of looking into, okay, I know I like my extracurriculars, I know I like my tech, my engineering businessy thing, but kind of going into how I got into tech really was, it was everywhere. And the great thing about technology is that you can literally look at whichever different industry and you will basically see it wherever you go. And like technology is literally embedded in every single piece of your life. So whether it's like your cameras that you use, your phones, whether it's in finance, I'll share about my story of working at RBC, which you would think is a bank, and you would probably be like, oh, accountants work there, or like people who are majoring in business or finance, but they have a huge technology department, and technology is really driving the financial industry. There's also transportation, and you would often think, okay, engineering falls into that, but you also need some tech know-how and balance to kind of innovate those engineering principles to another platform. Food industry is definitely very much impacted by technology as well, and same with e-commerce. Whenever you go shopping, you order things online through Amazon, technology is really driving every single part of it, whether that's the manufacturing side of things or whether that is the app that you use to purchase something. So I think, long story short, technology is literally everywhere. Like, you can look at whatever piece of equipment that you have in front of you and see how technology has impacted that in one way or another. But I think my journey through tech has been a little bit different. I think my experiences initially were very much businessy in a sense, and it kind of transformed into now my current role, which I'll be doing heading into in May, of working as a product manager. So the one thing that I was looking at when I was looking for jobs or internships was it needs to be flexible, and it needs to be a company that I would appreciate working for. So having that good work-life balance was important, especially for somebody who volunteering is my life, essentially. So for me, I needed to be sold on the fact that that company would be a company that would support me throughout my journey. And initially, when I applied to RBC, I was like, wait, what am I actually doing here? Like, how is technology impacting finance? Like, okay, I know like we have online banking, mobile banking, that probably needs tech, but like, what else is out there? So in RBC, I joined as a technical systems analyst working in their data security team, and analyzing how to use technology and how to create different tools to classify different documents, so that when somebody maybe is trying to send a document outside of the network, we can flag it and say, no, you cannot send that private document out into the world where it might get hacked or it might get taken by a malicious hacker or something along those lines. So I started there and then moved into cloud security, because cloud is basically where everything is in nowadays. And then I moved into data engineering. So if you look at my progression in tech, I started off as just a simple analyst, working on like the specific tool, to actually developing, kind of doing engineering in a sense, and then moving into data engineering, which is still related to tech, because a lot of the times you'll find that the tech industry is geared towards data and how we can leverage data to make benefits for us. And so RBC actually has tons of apps that they are currently releasing over the next couple of months and years, where they were looking at how to best use their data to determine how to keep their network secure. So I was working with the security team, seeing how the network security was looking, and trying to find ways to use machine learning in a sense to help along those lines. But once I had 3 terms at RBC, which is basically a year, I realized that I wanted to pivot into the business tech world. So that's where I joined KPMG as a software engineering consultant. And that was a great breakthrough in terms of looking at technology, not just from the technical standpoint, so not just the coding you might do or the tools that you might use, but seeing how technology also plays in with different companies and different clients and the business world. So in this role, I was working on more higher level things rather than working on super technical things, and working with different clients on how to best use technology to help them succeed in their mission and their vision. And that was great. But at the end of the day, I wanted to be a product manager, which basically combines engineering and that side of things with the client, the customer that you're trying to serve, plus basically every other team that you need to work with to make it together. So in the summer, I'll be working at Splunk, which is a data company essentially. And essentially they have software tools that companies use to basically keep track of their data, and to basically make decisions based on their data. So it's a pretty cool company. I definitely take a look. Splunk is definitely, I think, a company that you don't necessarily think of when you think of big tech, but it's definitely up and coming, and it's a great company, I think, and I'm excited to go into that journey a little bit. But yeah, that kind of wraps up, I guess, my journey through tech, and I guess where I kind of went from being a child who liked math and science to kind of being in this tech industry realm of like mixing a lot of different pieces together as a whole. But I think to end things off, I know I had a lot of pictures in all my slides, and that's just because I find it easier to have a lot of pictures. But if you do take anything away from my talk today, it'll be the next 2 slides that I'll be sharing. So in terms of tips for high school students and in terms of wanting to pursue a career in tech, explore as much as you can. Don't close your doors to things that you're unsure about. I hated coding in high school. I took one coding class in grade 11 and that was it. Like I did not want to touch it ever again. But now coding is literally like one of my greatest skill sets. So explore and don't close your doors to things that you're unsure about. Get yourself out there. Create a network of individuals, friends, and role models you can take inspiration from and also lean on. So I think developing those friend groups or those individuals that you're like, hey, at one point in time, I want to be like that person, can not only inspire you, but also give you some perspective and idea as to how to break into the tech industry or what kind of roles that you think would be best fit for you. So try to create that network of individuals. At RBC, I met this amazing woman. She is still my mentor to this day, but she definitely resonated with me. And to this day, like if I ever have any big career decisions to make, she's like literally one of the first people I call. And I'm like, hey, can we chat for 5 minutes? I just don't know what I'm doing. I need some help. And create that network that you can rely on, but you can also support at the same time. Focus on developing your technical skills, but also your personal skills. So I know I said that like, volunteering is great, like being involved in your community, extracurriculars, amazing. But to a certain extent, if you want to break into tech, if you have an understanding of the technical skills that you'll need or that the others around you need, it'll give you an upper hand advantage in the sense that you can understand where these engineers or where these technical people are coming from, so that even if you yourself may not have a technical background, you can still be able to network and chat and be like, oh yeah, that's how this works, but have you considered this? And it makes it easier to have those conversations and to be, in a certain sense, taken seriously. But more importantly, it'll give you that upper hand in terms of understanding what is going on in the world of tech. And if you know you're interested in a certain topic, actively search for opportunities where you can grow on that. I think it's always great to kind of look at the opportunities that you have out there. RBC has summer programs for high school students, and I know a ton of other companies do as well. There are also a lot of different summer programs out there too. So if you know you're interested in tech, if you know you kind of maybe want to be more of a developer, or if you want to be in a techie businessy role, or if you want to be an analyst of some type, definitely find Google is your best friend and search for opportunities that might help you kind of navigate that journey. And then specifically for breaking into tech and career tips, like know your strengths and weaknesses and use them to your advantage. So when you're looking at a potential role or a potential, I guess, company that you want to work for, figure out, okay, what do I have now? What do I not have? And how can I break into that, I guess, realm of technology? And how can I use whatever strengths I have in that specific role? Figure out what part of tech you wanted to develop in. Tech is huge. And as I mentioned, like I had a wide variety of roles within tech, ranging anywhere from non-technical all the way to technical. So I would say try to figure out what part of tech you want to kind of work in. Also, what industry you want to work in. It doesn't mean if you choose an industry, it doesn't mean that you're going to be stuck in that industry, because a lot of the things that you do in tech, you can easily pivot. But it's all about trying to figure out, okay, what's going to make you the most happy, and what role, and then in what company. Be able to pivot and understand the technology. Being comfortable with being uncomfortable is the motto. Technology changes so frequently that one day you'll be using a certain tool, the next day it'll be gone. And that's literally how it feels like. You need to be able to pivot and understand this technology and be comfortable with saying, hey, I don't know how this works, but I want to learn and I can learn. So always being on your toes and kind of going along with that flow is important. And as I mentioned, I think in the previous slide, network, and don't be afraid to ask someone for help. This one is hard for me too, actually. So my biggest story is that when I applied to my internship for May, it was my first product management interview ever. I did not know what to study for. I didn't know what kind of questions would be asked of me. And I reached out to my network. I reached out to people that I'd interviewed for the company before. I'd reached out to people with the role at different companies and been like, hey, how is this going? Like, what should I prepare for? What is gonna be like my next steps and things like that. So they really helped me. I think they're the reason why I got the job that I did, was just because I had that network to kind of explain the process to me or just give me general tips on what to expect, what to look for, and also help me navigate the process of interviewing and things like that. Definitely a tip that you will need in the future. But I think as high school students, it's always good to have that background or to be aware of some of these tips and tricks. And I just want to end off with like, it's okay to not know what you're doing and to ask for help when you need it. I think in high school, the environment that you're in, sometimes it feels uncomfortable to ask for help. At least I know I felt uncomfortable asking for help. But something that I learned in my first year of university is like, we're not all geniuses and you're not all going to know what like you want to do with your life or what certain technical knowledge means. So it's always good to ask for help, and it's not making you any smaller, not knowing or something, or trying to ask for that help in that process. So if you take anything away from this presentation, I would say it's the last two slides. But I think that also wraps up my talk. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, I've put my social media on the screen there. So you can either shoot me an email or send me a message, and I'd be glad to chat with any one of you throughout. So I will stop sharing my screen here and I will send it back to Ria, I believe.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for sharing that wonderful presentation with us. There were definitely some tips that like I found really useful. And I feel like this is like a personal thing, but when you mentioned that you hated coding in high school, I saw Shrishti smile in the corner because a story is that me and Shrishti took a grade 12 computer science course, and we absolutely hated that course so much. And it was overwhelming. And I feel like it induced anxiety to us because we weren't the best students. And we were surrounded by so many people that knew coding, knew a lot of these languages, understood everything that was coming out of the teacher's mouth. And we were just in awe because we were not really proficient at coding. And so knowing that you weren't good at coding, but in university, you started to get like develop skills and get better. It kind of like gives us hope that like there is hope there. You can still get better. So absolutely. Thank you for that.
No, absolutely. I think coding is definitely not the great. I feel like it really depends on who's teaching it in a sense, but not just because the teacher is bad. I think sometimes it's just the environment that you're in also can have a huge impact on how you learn something. But yeah, don't worry. Coding is definitely something that was scary, but it isn't that scary once you get comfortable with it, essentially.
Definitely. I feel like many of the students that want to start coding, I feel like they're a bit afraid of how many lines of code there are. But I think once you get hang of it, it kind of just comes second nature, and you can try other languages. There's so much more for coding. So before we begin our panelist questions, we're going to take the time to ask the audience if you have any questions for Andrea so far. If there's like any questions, you can put on a chat, or you can unmute your mic and say it. Okay, so far there's nothing, but however, while we're doing the panelist questions, if you guys have any questions, just shoot it in the chat and then we'll get to it as soon as possible. So I'm going to start with the first question, which is, what are some of the biggest challenges you faced as a woman in STEM, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one of the biggest challenges was being told, specifically in high school, I come to think of a memory where I made it into the robotics program that I was in. And essentially, I was told by some other classmates, they're like, you're not even interested in coding. You don't even like this program. Why are you in it? And that kind of stung a little bit in the sense that I don't have to have all the knowledge to be able to like go into a program that is very technical. And I think the reason I chose Mechatronics Engineering was because I wanted to gain that technical knowledge. And I knew I didn't have it in high school. Like I did not do robotics. I did not, as I said, like I hated coding. But I think people who basically assume that because I didn't have any I haven't shown any, I guess, interest in technology, that's the reason I shouldn't be in this field, was one of the, I think, first places where I was like, okay, maybe is this it? Is this place for me? So I think that's also a part of just having negative energy, I guess, come to you in a sense. But also I think as a current student in a STEM field, I guess, having an environment where people feel, specifically guys, feel like they need to be dominant in a sense, and they need to explain things for you and to be basically, in a sense, rude about like you not knowing anything. So there's been a lot of instances where essentially other people have been rude, or they have been dominating in the sense that they just don't think you should be there. And I think that's the hardest part, is trying to push those voices aside, because STEM is a very welcoming place once you can make that network in that community, which is why I'm telling all of you to definitely keep that community of women in tech, women in STEM with you, because they will be your greatest supports. And very recently, I had a conversation with this girl in my class who I previously hadn't talked to very much in the first 2-3 years of my program. And she was like, that guy, he was being really rude to me. And like basically we all had the same experiences, but definitely creating that network and knowing that you belong in the STEM field that you're in is very important. And just having that confidence, even when you feel like the world is telling you, why are you in STEM? Because STEM can be a very welcoming place, and we need more women in STEM. Otherwise, this world is probably going into shambles if you don't have a lot more diversity in the tech world and things like that. But yeah, hopefully that answered that question.
Yeah, it's quite difficult for women and engineering specifically, because I feel like in science we have, our previous panelist, she was in pharmacy, she had a lot of female peers. And when it comes to engineering in general and technology, there's not a lot of females there. And I feel like relating to this on like my personal opinion, I feel like other females that have been in tech classes in our high school, they kind of feel as if like if there weren't a lot of females in our class, it would be very hard to get through that course without having that nagging feeling behind you that are you really supposed to be here? Or you have people coming up to you, giving you that look like, do you know what you're doing? Or it kind of just like depletes your confidence a lot. So it was very inspiring. Like it's very inspiring how you overcame these challenges and gives younger generations to keep working hard. Yes. So we'll be moving on to the next question.
Okay, the next question. So what skills do you think are important to obtain in high school to pursue a career in the STEM field?
That is a good question. I think it's a mix of being able to pivot. That's I think one of the tips that I gave was like being able to pivot and know like that things are always changing. So curiosity to learn. I would also add in there as well, is like STEM is a very up and coming place to be, where there's a lots of learning and lots of growth to be had. So you need to, number one, be curious and be engaged and be genuinely interested in STEM fields. But also you kind of need to have this flexibility of knowing that something you learn today may not be something that you will forever remember in a sense. So I would say curiosity to learn, being able to pivot, and then also I think attention to detail. You don't have to be the greatest at it, but I think in a lot of STEM fields, their attention to detail is very important, and kind of knowing how things fit together, and kind of having an imagination as well. But yeah, I don't think there's really any specifics other than those couple of things where it's like, I feel like STEM is for everybody, and you need to kind of find your niche of what kind of STEM, what part of STEM would you like to kind of take part in, essentially, if that makes sense.
Yes, everyone has like their own strengths and weaknesses, and I really like that how you said STEM is made for like everyone. Just it depends on the person, I guess. So I thank you for your advice for the what skills we would require. So moving on to the next question.
So I'm going to take a pause on the panel's questions because I feel like we have like a lot of chat questions. I want to get to them first because like they're really important. So the first question that's there, and I'm trying to scroll without trying to see all. Okay, so first question is by Victoria, and she said, could you give tips to students who love technical communications and design? And are there a lot of careers for technical writers?
Absolutely. So I think yes to the question, are there a lot of careers for technical writers? Every time Waterloo has this system where you can basically apply to your co-op jobs, and there are so many technical writers that are on the hunt of just being able to explain your work or like the technical work in an easy way that others can, maybe non-technical people can understand it, is super important, and there will always be room for it. So even if you maybe lose part of like the design side, or if you perhaps maybe don't go into the communication side as much, regardless, if you have the ability to be able to share your technical knowledge in a way that other people who may not have the same background as you can understand, that is always a win. And I think there are definitely a lot of career paths that will be open, even apart from technical writers, that will open if you can have that balance. But yeah, in terms of tips, I don't think I have much. If you are able to do that, that is fantastic. But I think it's also good to, if you mainly don't have that experience or don't have that balance, something that I like to do is trying to think of how can you explain this concept to like a 5-year-old? And how do you do that in a nice way that they'll be able to understand it, and that it'll resonate with them and that they'll keep it with them. So yeah, but there's definitely lots of careers for technical writers, in my opinion, just because I see them a lot when I'm interviewing or applying for positions.
Yeah, I think the fact you mentioned with concepts explained to a 5-year-old, I feel like a lot of times we try to take in like complicated things and like you need to do like all of it at once. It's kind of important to like chunk it up, like pretend you're like feeding bits of it information. And for like tech in general, like there's a lot of things that can be overwhelming. And by sectioning it off, it can be really nice for like a technical writer to just improve on that. We're going to take in one more chat question because I do want to get to the panel's questions, but don't worry, we'll have time at the end, hopefully, to answer all the chat questions. So the last chat question that we're going to get to for now is, I never got into coding or anything tech related in high school, but do you think there are still opportunities to try out in university, even if it's not my major?
Absolutely. I feel like, okay, I had zero tech background and I had zero robotics backgrounds coming into university. And even if you are maybe not going into a very tech heavy course, there's always different clubs and opportunities where you can basically learn and grow. Mechatronics specifically assumed when we went in first year that we knew nothing, which I really appreciated because I was like, okay, I genuinely don't know anything. So don't worry if you're in grade 12 and you basically don't have a lot of technical experience, because at the end of the day, these are all skills that you can learn and grow at any point in time. You just have to make the effort and make the decision that, yes, I want to learn these things and I want to learn these, like, I guess, tools or technologies and things like that. So don't worry. I think a lot of university programs assume that you know nothing and that's how you get in. But also I think you don't have to rely on university to teach you a lot of things. And the reason I say this is because I have a friend who's a chemical engineering student. He realized very quickly that chemical engineering wasn't for him, but he didn't want to leave his program because he didn't want to fall back a year for graduating. But what he did was he basically did his own research, and he went on like coding websites, and he watched a lot of YouTube videos. And the great thing about technology is that basically everything is available at your fingertips. So you can basically learn a lot of the things that the tech industry is doing or the tech industry is creating just by yourself. So I would also say that like engineering or like any degree that you do is a great foundation, but a lot of the times you're learning on the job. So don't feel stressed that you maybe don't have as much technical background or technical know-how from high school.
Absolutely. I think that's the thing I like about university, where they assume you know nothing. So you're pretty much like a baby coming into university. And it's kind of helpful because oftentimes you see your other peers and you feel like they're really ahead of the game and they know so much. But especially when you mentioned how a lot of resources you can find online. And I know a lot of people who are currently interested in web development, they usually just go on any website and they don't code like every single day. They take their time, they make their own pace, and eventually they absorb knowledge like little by little, and it helps for them and their learning style. So that was really great how like technology can it can be found, and the resources can be found like online and by other peers as well. So for our next panelist question, the question is, how are you keeping yourself motivated during the pandemic?
That's a very good question. So when the pandemic first hit, being somebody who's always busy, I hated at least I liked the first 2 weeks of sitting and doing nothing. I think it was a experience, I guess. It was a good experience just to sit down and do nothing, and kind of be told by your professors, like, don't worry guys, we don't want to stress you too much. You still have to finish the course, but it's okay. And it also gave me a lot of time to spend with my family, whereas I would during the pandemic, I would have probably spent the last 2 years basically away from my family, but because of the pandemic, I was at home, which had its own pros and cons there. But I would say after a certain while, it got to the point where I needed to be busy again, and I needed to have normalcy in a sense. So the way that I've kind of taken care of myself throughout the pandemic is, number one, creating a schedule for myself. Even if it's not a schedule where I'm going out and I'm meeting people, a schedule that I follow. So waking up in the morning, getting a workout in, taking a shower, getting along with my school things or on my co-op things, whatever I was doing at the time. And then also trying out new things as well. So as I mentioned, I started my Duke of Edinburgh Award, which essentially had 3 or 4 different components that you do for about a year. And so that kept me busy as well. I looked for opportunities that I could do from home, so I was still interacting with other people and that I wasn't just kind of at home seeing the same 3-4 people in my life. So it's all about, I think, I took care of myself by understanding that life isn't going to be the same, but trying to bring back normalcy by doing things that I loved and that I enjoyed, and volunteering, but in a different way, essentially.
Yeah, definitely. The pandemic has been I feel like it's just crashed into my organizational skills, and I feel everything is over the place. But definitely a lot of sometimes calendars and just keeping track of your mental health. Sometimes a lot of things can be overwhelming. You don't realize how much it's taking a toll on your body, but taking those breaks and realizing that it's okay, just check on yourself sometimes, it's really important, especially during these trying times. And so we're going to move on to the next panelist question.
So your next question is, where do you see yourself in 5 years, and what are some of your future goals?
Ooh, that's a deep one. So in the next 5 years, I think this is the criteria that I tell basically everybody that I meet, because I think I've had interviewers ask me this question, and I think really in the next 5 years, I want to be in a position where I can support myself. and I'm in a career that makes me happy. I don't really care what industry it's in, as long as it's a career that I'm mixing my people skills and my technical skills in whatever way, shape, or form there is out there. But also, I think the third part of it would be to be able to, I guess, do the things that I love. And as long as I think I cover up those three bases, I think I'll have considered myself like successful in the next 5 years. Career wise, hopefully I stick with product management. I feel like it's a great place for me to use my strengths and my weaknesses in total. But honestly, at the end of the day, who knows where I'll be 5 years from now. I'm just as curious as like everybody else is on what the next 5 years would potentially look like.
Yeah, everything is so unpredictable, but I like how you said those three things are what the main things you want to keep in those next 5 years. But yeah, just like almost like go with the flow, see what happens. It's like also a journey. So thank you for that. I think our next question will be from the chat, I believe.
Okay, that's my cue. So looking at the chat, I know that there's one. Okay, so our question is, do you feel that the mechatronics program gave you sufficient maneuverability in your career / co-op paths?
Yeah, I would say yes. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with mechatronics sometimes because, as I mentioned, like I realized very early on that mechanical was not where I wanted to be, but I'm still having to take courses related to mechanical engineering because those courses are very specific and I need to take them to graduate. So that's where the love-hate comes in, is like once you realize that maybe this isn't for you, you're like, oh, well, why am I taking it? I'm not even going to use it in the future. But on the flip side, being forced to take those courses has given me more perspective. And in the case where you're looking at different roles that may need a wide variety of skill sets, I can say like, oh, I have had exposure to this topic and I know what you're talking about, and I can continue supporting me in that sense. So yes, I think there's so much maneuverability. I think if I look at also the career paths that my friends have taken, including myself, some of us have gone to the automotive industry, some of us have gone to like become designers, some of us have become software engineers, developers, whatever you name it. And so I think there's a lot of potential for you to be able to explore. I think the only caveat is that if you realize early on that something isn't what you're looking for, then that can have a, depending on how you see it, you can either be like, this sucks, I don't like this course, or you can see it as it's a great opportunity. And I have my moments for both. I think some days I'm like, why am I taking this course if I'm not going to need it? But at the end of the day, I think, okay, I'm probably going to need it, or it'll give me like the flexibility to use it in the future. If I do at any point want to go into mechanical engineering, which mechanical engineering is great. Don't get me wrong. Not for me though.
I think, yeah, a lot of times I hear from peers and students that mechatronics engineering, especially if you go to robotics teams, then it's always mechatronics engineering, this and that, especially in Waterloo. They mainly like talk about how like versatile it is. You know, you have your software component, you have your electrical, you have the mechanical. And then I feel like those pathways give you a lot of open jobs. And like you mentioned with tech, it's like you can, if you're not interested in something, if you learn like how to do like, for example, like web development online, and you can sometimes like apply for a job for web development, something like that, that versatility and that maneuverability is like pretty important. I feel like that's very popular when you're picking a career. So thank you for that. Our next question in the chat is there something that you feel men can do specifically in everyday life to support women in technology and break that pseudo-dominant stereotype that you mentioned before?
Yeah, this one's a very good question. And I think personally, the way that I would approach it is like, they just need to be allies and change their way of thinking. Well, I would say this is for those that maybe assert their dominance, would need to change their ways of thinking. But to those that maybe would like to support women in tech and have that like positive I guess, impact and be an ally, I think number one is standing up to your peers. I think if you see somebody basically like mansplaining in a sense, or maybe they are taking over a project or things like that, definitely call them out on it. And it shouldn't have to be up to a girl or a woman to be calling these people out. Like as an ally, you can also call it out as well. So I think that's something that I'd like to see is like people actually like standing up for like the like not so nice things that they see in class. And I think one of the examples that I'd like to give is like on a recent project that I was working on, I felt that I was not being included in on different aspects that I felt like were in my part of the project. And so I brought it up with one of the guys on my team, and I was like, look, not feeling it. Like I probably should have been included in these conversations. This has not been a good experience, but it is what it is. But yeah, I'm not pleased. And he took it upon himself to kind of tell the rest of the other guys in terms of like, hey, this is not cool. And I also mentioned it to the other guys as well. And now it's a little bit more of like an equal partnership in a sense for this project. So I really think if you want to support women in tech, and if you want to be allies, is let them take, not let them take anything, but I would say stand up for the injustices that you see and actually speak out if you see something that's happening that's like wrong. But also understand that I think women just treat different situations differently. So I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this thing, but like when it's like when a guy is like presenting like a presentation of some sort, they're like, oh yeah, this is all that I did. But a lot of the times as women, typically what we do is, oh no, we did it as a team. So I think also kind of acknowledging like if somebody has done a good job, trying to like push them out of their shell a bit and saying like, hey, no, you did a lot of this and like you should get the credit for it. It's all about kind of understanding where things come from and how to best support in that sense. Yeah, but it's a very difficult question because in different situations you'd want to approach it in different ways.
Yeah, I feel like I've experienced that before in some technology classes as well. It's I guess like having many male people, I guess because sometimes it's hard for you to build your self-confidence a lot, especially when you're new to something. And sometimes you often think that, oh, they're right, they know what they're doing, but it's not always like that. Sometimes you do have to give your opinions as well. Like you're part of the team as well. You need to provide your input. It's not like you have lesser knowledge in the subject, you're just learning. And so every person's opinions really count in like any team, and especially in engineering and in technology. A lot of the projects that are built, they're built on collaboration and they're built on leadership. So that was very, especially if we try to bridge that gender gap that's in tech, we can like move forward and we can hopefully get to the point where we see an even divide amongst our tech classes and our tech undergraduate programs. So I think that concludes our final question. I was going to ask the final question. However, you did explain it into your slideshow, so I don't want you to repeat it one more time. However, if you want to, because this question is just basically asking like, do you want to say anything else to our high school audience, or a few reminders, few points, anything, just like shoot it out.
Yeah, so I guess like my last two slides kind of wrapped it up. But at the end of the day, like don't be scared to pursue a career in tech or engineering. I think there is so much out there and there's so much diversity needed in these fields. Yes, it can be intimidating. And I can firsthand say it is very intimidating. But at the end of the day, like you have the ability to make a lot of great positive change by pursuing a career in tech or engineering or wherever STEM field or STEAM field you'd like to go into. So definitely, I would say, don't feel like you should not be pursuing tech. It's a very open space where if you make the right connections and if you have, I guess, the community behind you, it'll be a very welcoming place.
Thank you very much for that, those tips. So this concludes the end of our technology panel for day two. Day two of STEAM Talks. We would like to thank you, Andrea, for taking the time out of your day to join this event and share some valuable information and advice to our audience. I'm certain it is helpful to each and everyone here today. We would also like to thank all of you for joining this event today. We hope you had a good time and took some things away from this event. Be sure to sign up for the workshops that will be happening throughout this week. Girl Up Brampton will be hosting day 3 of STEAM Talks for Arts happening tomorrow at 5 to 6 p.m. So don't miss out on this opportunity. Hope to see you all there. Thank you once again.
Before we end the meeting, I would like to take a picture of this meeting. So if you're able to turn your camera on, please do so. I will give everybody a few moments. All right, okay, 3, 2, 1. Oops, I clicked the wrong button. Here, let's try this one more time. There we go. Okay. Yes, we got it. 3, 2, 1. Okay. And just to do the giveaway. So today's giveaway item is 6 cupcakes, and I will be spinning the wheel right now. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so our winner is Anushka. You will be DM'd shortly with instructions on how to retrieve your prize. I will hand it back to Kushleen now.
Sorry for the background noise, but thank you once again, everyone, and you're free to leave. So have a great day.
Bye, everyone.